Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wine Down. As you can see, we have a lot of wine to get through today. Just kidding.
I wish.
We'll be focusing on one.
This is a Vittiano. It's a Rosso Italiano. So it's a red wine from Italy that's blend of different grapes, which is always a good idea on a Friday.
Hey, and if anyone, is a professional pourer, I don't know if that's like an actual job title, feel free to leave a comment and give me some pointers.
I mean, I think you're doing a pretty bang-up job.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah. I'll take that.
Oh, wow, that's pretty even. Check it out.
Cheers.
Cheers, as if I've not done this before. I have. All right. Now we're ready. Now we're ready. Okay. We're going to be talking about a couple episodes that aired this week. Both interesting and helpful and useful.
Yes.
Well, especially this first one. Helpful and useful. So we're talking about this week's episode of Cunningham Legal, what to do with your inheritance.
And what not to do.
And what not to do with your inheritance.
They were very emphatic about the what not to do.
Yeah, they literally said this is what dummies do with their inheritance. Just like calling it out. Calling me out. Like,
they even had a picture of Dumb and Dumber. It was definitely...
You're like, okay, well, I don't want to be that person, so I'll just continue watching. Thank you.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be Harry or Lloyd.
Yes.
Although it's a great movie.
It is a great movie, but that's besides the point. So one of their first tips was maybe don't take out all of the money inherited from an IRA all at once because you will be taxed dollar for dollar. That's not fun.
Yeah.
So it would be in your best interest to take the money out gradually rather than in one lump sum.
Yeah, as you need it, because you are going to be taxed as regular income when it comes out of an IRA.
Right. That's good advice. Don't want to be a dummy and take it all out at once.
I think the other thing about, the inheritance of a huge lump sum or a lump sum is that people forget about the taxes that you will have to pay on it.
Yeah.
And so just to be wary of that, if you can leave it in a trust and only take out what you need, that is the best bet for you.
But of course, they always say consult your financial advisor before you do anything with the money.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's just the case for basically anything you do with your money ever. Just like, don't even look at it. Consult your financial advisor before you even look at it, okay?
The next one was to try not to get rich quick. So get rich slow was Jim's advice, which I think is very relevant. So
I should tell my husband to stop buying lottery tickets.
You can. Just don't spend your entire inheritance on buying lottery tickets.
There you go.
It might not work out the way you want it to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Or gamble it all away. I'm going to double my money,
Right.
Most likely the house always wins, so you probably won't have the outcome you'd like.
That's right. As we've learned again on the show.
Yep.
They talked about, don't talk about how much you inherited. That can stir the pot, can it?
It definitely can.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I just naturally, I don't know. Why would you, really?
I mean... I would talk about
Cousin Ed and be like, guess what I got? Sorry you weren't in there, sucker.
Or even your friends. I mean, they might be happy for you that Cousin Ed, who knows? He might be jealous or...
Cousin Ed's going to get jealous. Don't tell Cousin Ed.
You said Cousin Ed and I thought Cousin It in my head. And I was just thinking lots and lots of hair.
Lots of hair. Cousin It. That could be my cousin too. Who knows? I like that they talk about the just the psychological aspect of inheritance versus, earned money.
Yes.
Because oftentimes inheritance is coming at the expense of, a loved one, a loss.
Right.
And so they're saying, when you're in this heightened emotional state, don't make these rash financial decisions with that money.
Right.
Because you just might not be in the right mindset to be making those decisions. So they recommended actually waiting a year before you do anything, whether you're speaking to your financial advisor or not. Just give yourself a year to grieve, to process before you make any before you're like buying one of those tickets to
Right,
space.
to space, yes. You're getting on Virgin Galactic,
Exactly.
and that's what you're spending your inheritance on.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. At least not in the first year. Give yourself some time. And then the second year, you're like, no, it's a good idea. Then go do your thing.
Well, and I think one of the other pieces that they touched on here too was that you don't necessarily need to do something with that money.
Right.
And that is another psychological difference between inheriting money and earning it. With
Right.
earned money, you've worked really hard for this.
And it's usually a plan,
Yeah.
that you have with that money for that money.
Right.
While you're earning it, you planned for your career that you're in. There's thought that's gone into it your whole life.
Right. But, and some people are like, oh, well, Aunt Marge left me $10,000 and I need to do something with that money. I need to go on the trip I've always wanted to.
Right.
And maybe that is what you decide to do with that money, but take a year, take a beat. Mm-hmm. Maybe you actually should work on paying off some debt, or maybe you should invest it. There's a lot of different things. Certainly consult a professional if it's a large lump of sum of money, and that way it can help you last
They talk
longer.
about donating as well. Like
Right.
maybe that's an option for you, if your retirement is already kind of set up for yourself and you're like, oh, there's a lot of different options that I have with this money and directions that I could go, because it's not really planned unless, as we've talked about before, you've had these conversations with your family and you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. I mean, that's I think a pretty great scenario.
Right.
I think there should be more of that.
Right.
But then we've also learned that you could think what's going to happen, and then Aunt Hilda throws a curveball in the end. Aunt Hilda and Uncle Ed.
Uncle Ed, Aunt
not looking out
Marge.
for
We've
your
got
well-being.
all sorts of random family members coming in hot.
Is that what we're going to name our next kids? Uncle Ed and Aunt Hilda.
Yes.
And Marge. And...
Yes, please. Definitely.
They gave a good example that I had to write it down because I wasn't sure if I could articulate it myself. But they gave this example. Okay, say mom and dad have a living trust that gives everything to their daughter, Marge. This is Marge's parents. Okay, the daughter dies 5 years later, leaving everything to her husband, not her children. So not their children. The husband remarries. Okay, so there are ways to avoid this to ensure that your inheritance stays within your family. Mm-hmm. And by that they say consider getting a continuing trust. Mm-hmm. Ooh, financial advisor time. Go to your financial advisor. But I wouldn't have even thought of this.
Well, and I think this is actually more even a conversation to have with an estate planning attorney, because this would be something that you would want to set up. And that's the other thing is that, and Jim and Winston talk about it constantly, is you need to have it set up before your death, because posthumously, is that the way you say it?
Posthumously. Whoa.
After death, after you've died, you can't. Ding. you can't change a trust.
Right.
So you need to have the changes in place before, and have them legally done, et cetera, et cetera. So this would be a case where Marge would need to set up her trust, or the continuation of the trust
to ensure that
to go to her kids, because that's ultimately probably what her parents wanted, was for the money to flow from them to through their side of the family.
Stay within the blood family.
And we don't know what Marge's husband is going to do. Maybe he's
I think they were alluding to the fact that it did not stay in the family. And how do we make sure this doesn't happen? Mm-hmm. And so there are ways to make sure that doesn't happen. If it's something that you're planning your will or trust and you're that's of concern to you, or something that you hadn't thought of.
Yep.
Which, I mean, it's so far, it's like, it goes to this person, then who does it go to? Then who does it go to? Then who does it go to? You kind of are like, well, I just stopped with my first trustee. I didn't realize I had to continue thinking about this, but it's food for thought for sure.
And I think the other thing that the continuing trust, one of the other things that they talked about that was a benefit, is that it can also help keep that money out of any bankruptcy or any liability suits or anything like that, because the money stays within the trust. It's not a lump sum, and it's not given to a particular person. So it stays within the trust where that trustee can pull money from it as they need to, but it doesn't become Marge's asset that then transfers directly to her husband. It stays within the trust.
It's confusing.
Instead.
It is a little confusing.
That's why you hire professionals to do this.
I mean, I was watching the episode and I had to do like rewind. It's like when you're reading a book and you like realize that you weren't paying attention to that page. You're like, oh, I have to read that page over again because I wasn't paying attention. Well, I was paying full attention, but I still had to keep rewinding it. So I was like, woof. Yeah, I would definitely need to have, I will need to have somebody help me with that because, whoa.
Yes.
There's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. And I think one of the other things, so they talked about 3 different kinds of continuing trust that you can do. The first one, and sorry, I am looking at notes because this was a very convoluted, like there's a lot of important concepts in here, but they're not things that I am well versed on. So I really wanted to make sure I'm trying to speak to the right information.
And we're not like
for
studying for a quiz here. We just watched an episode and we're trying to share some insight.
But really, if you're interested in this topic, to watch the episode from Cunningham Legal because I thought it was really eye-opening.
It is very eye-opening.
And so then they talk about the Inheritance Protection Trust, which is a great way to set up your trust if the trustee is going to be, the beneficiary, is going to be a pretty competent and responsible, financially responsible person. So this is a great kind of trust if your kid or whoever your beneficiary is super responsible or is responsible enough. They can take care of their own money.
You trust them.
Maybe they're an accountant. They're going to be good. Well, unless they have a gambling problem, and that's a whole separate issue. But
they're financially savvy. They're financially savvy. Their head's on straight. You're like, okay, they can deal with this. It's okay.
And then there is the Dole It Out Trust.
Right. This is okay. So if you have a kid, lovely, but doesn't know what they're doing financially, might be just kind of all over the place. You're worried that they're going to buy a ticket to, Virgin Galactic and be flying to the moon, with their inheritance.
Right. They're spending it all on that.
The age of 18.
Right.
Yeah. So then yes, you go for the Dole It Out Trust where somebody is overseeing and making sure that they're not making like rash decisions with the money. So I'm sure that will annoy the beneficiary, but...
But this is also a really great safeguard to put in place in case your beneficiary has maybe a substance abuse problem, or maybe they do have a gambling problem, or they just aren't financially responsible in general. They've made a lot of bad decisions financially, and this could be a way to make sure that, to help ensure that they are set up for success because they have somebody helping them out, somebody overseeing.
Yeah, it's in their best interest.
The trust for them, and just kind of giving them money as they need it for the things that the trust says they should use it for. Yeah, it's having a
financial professional overseeing the finances for you, basically. Yeah. So in some ways, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I could have used that throughout my 20s.
And if this is the way that you have it, they mentioned that having the trust protector or the trustee
trust protector.
In Nevada, because then there is no income tax, which then it helps with the taxes situation.
So they're probably getting a lot of job opportunities.
Probably. There's probably a lot of LLCs or a lot of companies that are trust protectors in the state of Nevada.
On this. Yeah,
exactly.
All right,
there's
job
a couple
opportunities.
There's a couple other states that also have no state income tax, but Nevada is one of them, and that's the one they mentioned.
Right. Isn't Florida one?
I believe Florida is, and I also think Washington State is as well.
Okay.
California is not. Neither is Pennsylvania or New York.
There's New York or New Jersey.
Nope.
Yes, no, we don't know that life. Oh, okay. So the next one is Special Needs Trust.
So a Special Needs Trust is kind of how it sounds. It is set up specifically for a beneficiary who has special needs, whether it's a mental, physical disability. They might be collecting disability from the state through Medicare, Medicaid, but this is helpful in those circumstances.
Yes. See? See, this is why we needed to watch this episode.
Yeah. So help take care of them for the long term, and help kind of maneuver through all the different legal things that you need to in order for them to keep their benefits while also having the trust.
Right. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we're going to be right back. Cheers. All right, we're back, and we are going to talk about this week's episode from the Blockchain Interviews. Dan Weiskopf interviews Nic Carter, who also, how old is this Doogie Howser? What's going on with this kid? He looks like he's in high school, and he's brainiac. I'm I can't keep up with you.
I mean, hard to say. Definitely seemed super knowledgeable, but I was like, wow, you're a lot younger than I anticipated.
Yeah.
But also every time they mentioned his name being Nic Carter, all I could think of was
Nic Carter.
Yeah. Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, I know, same. I know the blonde hair flashes in my through my memory bank of the 90s. I don't know.
Oh man, the early aughts.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yes. So, but Nic Carter is also a Bitcoin genius.
Yes, extremely knowledgeable and clearly super focused on Bitcoin and blockchain.
Yep. Nic Carter Gen Z.
Yeah. Not millennial Nic Carter, who's got sweet dance moves. And
exactly. Yep.
Lots of tattoos these days? Or is that,
I haven't seen him in a while.
Is that Aaron Carter? Oh, Aaron Carter, his younger brother, is the one who's tatted up these days.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Man, I've lost touch. We digress.
Yeah.
Okay, so wow, I mean he talks about he's very, very passionate about Bitcoin and Bitcoin's future and people understanding the benefits that Bitcoin has potentially on the economy, on inflation, on the environment. This is a very controversial topic. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was watching it and I was like, I just don't know that much about it. I didn't know that there was controversy over, carbon emissions with Bitcoin and energy efficiency and all of these different things. So I was trying to look up the counter argument for it, which, I found a lot of information on. And I was like, oh, okay. But yes, he's trying to, he's trying to spread awareness towards, what he believes is more positive.
Yeah, I think he had some very interesting arguments. Mm-hmm. So Dan had him on because he has written a white paper, so a research paper on, what did he say? Bitcoin Net Zero is the name of the paper.
Yeah.
And one of the major things that they talk about is the first part of the paper is really all about how Bitcoin is such a great utility and how it is can be so helpful throughout the world. And I actually learned a lot of interesting things from this first portion of the interview because it wasn't a way I had thought of Bitcoin before.
Right.
I think of Bitcoin as or cryptocurrency in general.
Yeah.
I think of it as has been a very lucrative but very speculative and very volatile asset that is now becoming mainstream, but was so underground for so many years.
And because of its volatility, I think it's had, it's run into some pushback in becoming mainstream because people are fearful that their money's not safe there.
Right. And people have made gambles on it. There's some people who got in when it was very inexpensive, and now, Bitcoin's up to $60,000.
Right.
But there's other people who have bought in at the high, and it has come down a little bit in the last few months. Mm-hmm. So there's two sides to that coin, right? It's investing, and there's always,
and it's new,
It's a
new technology as well, and so
But he makes the point that Bitcoin adoption has been much more easily adopted in developing countries.
Right.
Because their monetary infrastructure, their governmental infrastructure is so volatile And so therefore their currency either has high or hyperinflation. And so therefore Bitcoin is actually a stable and safe option.
I know, I thought that was really interesting as well. I never would have thought of that.
I mean, I knew that people around the world were adopting it because it is a decentralized currency, but it was really interesting, the graphs that they were able to show, especially at the end, showing the adoption in, let's see, the top 5 were, have it written down because again, was very important to me. Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Ukraine, and Kenya were the top 5 adoption countries. So you think of all those countries and what do they have in common?
Right. So like it's actually combating inflation for these places that are suffering from like ultra high inflation.
Right.
So yeah, I never considered that. I wouldn't have also thought that those would be the countries that were using it most.
So it's the rate of adoption. So it was by percentage of per thousand or per million people.
Yeah.
So that was a way to have an equal playing field in terms of like, obviously India has so many more people than any of those other countries combined. But also they're number 2 on the list, which is crazy because then that means there's so many people in India who have adopted this.
Right. Well, and he was also arguing, he was like saying that critics talk about Bitcoin having high energy consumption, but he argues that it's far less than other tangible material items in our house that we use every day and we all accept because we see the utility in them, And so he was saying if people can understand the utility in Bitcoin, they might feel differently about the energy being used for it. But he said that Bitcoin is half the energy of a tumble dryer. Okay.
Yeah. I think he said a couple different things that made me think, and again, I'm not a blockchain expert, and nor do I pretend to be one. But there's the research that Bitcoin miners used 62 terawatts of energy in 2020 just to mine the coins. And I think that this is where he talks about how the carbon footprint of Bitcoin, specifically, that's what he spoke to, isn't as high as people think it is, especially compared to your household products. And then he goes on to say that really you should be comparing it to industries because Bitcoin mining is an industry.
Right.
Versus comparing it to, sometimes there's a lot of comparisons out there to countries and like whole country usage, which is like crazy if you're thinking mining a currency, which, you're doing it digitally.
Hard to process anyway. Let's be honest.
Is using more energy per year than some countries.
Oh, yeah.
And depends on the size of the country. He didn't go into specifics about the countries that it was compared to.
Right. I mean, I did, because I was curious. I wanted to read the counter argument kind of because I just don't know that much about this topic. I didn't know that there was environmental concerns with Bitcoin. Shame on me, maybe. But I also don't participate in it. So I just don't know. But according to an article from Forbes, they say that an average transaction of Bitcoin consumes over 17,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which is almost twice the monthly amount used by the average U.S. home. So, I mean, that's a lot.
And that's just for the transaction, right? So that's not talking about the mining of it, which is typically where people are caught up on the carbon footprint because it takes a lot of computing power and hours, and then therefore actual energy to mine these Bitcoins.
Yes, and how are they mining it? In what ways are they? And I don't know if they have the exact, numbers for like how much renewable energy they are using versus coal. And so, of course, I was looking that up as well.
What a good little researcher she is.
I got curious because I was confused. So
It's good to be curious.
I was curious, but it still does look like they're using, a decent amount of coal as well. So, but because this again is a newer, technology, and I'm hoping that as climate awareness is becoming more and more, hopefully they will move quickly into more renewable energy.
Right. I thought that one of the most interesting ways for him to break it down was how he spoke to it as being a synthetic metal. So it's obviously not a tangible thing. It's a currency, but gold is a tangible currency. Right. And so he compared it to the mining of steel, gold, silver, and put it on a graph, and the amount of energy it takes to mine those different metals. And I thought that was a really great visual way.
Yeah, making it tangible makes it easier to understand.
Exactly.
In a sense.
Exactly.
Because it's like trying to process the tooth fairy or something.
Exactly.
Although she's real.
Right.
There's any children watching the wind down.
The wind down
this evening.
About blockchain.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
If there is, you are remarkable. Wow. You're Doogie Howser. Okay.
I think the interesting thing about this article is that it opened up my eyes to understanding that Bitcoin is a global currency that is actually probably more beneficial for developing countries than I realized. And also, we have a Western point of view when it comes to analyzing the data about the carbon footprint. Because we have a stable or mostly stable economy. We have a stable currency. We aren't worried about the freedoms of our money. We are able to have all these we have all these institutions and freedoms that we're able to enjoy.
Right.
And so having something that is outside of that spectrum that can actually be a stabilizing force for us, we don't need as much. And so
we have like creature comforts that we don't need to sort of think outside the box with.
Exactly.
So everyone's like, well, I'm already financially kind of set up. I understand how investing in like the real money world works.
Right.
I don't really need to go into this other realm of investment that doesn't sound like it's very safe anyway. But yeah, and how in other countries, how it actually helps them and how it's different and how, I found that to be very interesting.
So you learn something new every day.
On ROI TV. And then you drink wine and talk about it.
Right.
Who knew I'd ever be talking about Bitcoin
and blockchain.
Inheritance and oh my goodness, such a smarty pants.
It's true. She does her own research. I mean, it's good.
Gotta cite your sources.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap on the wind down.
I think so.
Wow, I can't believe it's been another week. It's like flying by. Jeez. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we really hope to catch you next week with another episode of The Wind Down.
Cheers.